being all you can be was, like I say, the average age was 36. And they came from 137 different universities to Troy to graduate. And just think, I mean, 18 to 22-year-olds, that's our future. That's what we need to do. But an average age of 36, coming from 137 different universities, is incredible. I mean, to share that type of experience, I mean, these kids, go out. I have one of my best friends at 47, is now a doctor in San Diego, went back and got her med degree. I mean, it's, lifelong learning and continuing education. One of my mentors in his later years was Malcolm Knowles in adult education. And, I mean, he would have loved seeing this concept. And he actually worked with Army education at North Carolina State. I mean, he had been at Boston, and then he was North Carolina State. And so I had an opportunity with Malcolm Knowles. But seeing what was being done with these learners, these adult educators, the idea, the 90-year-old grandmother going back to get her degree, the abandoned child high school student going to Harvard, or the janitor at Columbia getting his degree. These are just great stories. But I'm just going to touch on a couple of, before I get into this, if I may, a couple of the success stories. The very first one I did was a guy by the name of Sheldon Small. And Sheldon had dropped out of high school at age 16 to take on the farm. Matter of fact, he was in South Carolina to take care of the family farm, help his parents. Joins the Army at 18. Needed basic skills in reading and math, of which we do to try to bring soldiers up so they can, prepare to get a magic score of 110 so that they can go to OCS or go green to gold or go warrant or go physician's assistant or flight or whatever with that magic 110. Sheldon had to do all this. He had to do the basic skills because his basic skills were down. So he does that, gets an associate, gets a bachelor's, gets a master's, becomes a E5, eventually wound up as a command sergeant major. He retires. He became one of our counselors at Fort Riley, Kansas. He was the very first be all you could be, true meaning of adult education story that I did. The next one was a private Mike Tucker. He was later down the road. I would do once probably every quarter, but Private Mike Tucker became one of the next. Mike started taking classes. His unit let him go to courses, take classes 3 days a week, and so he takes courses, gets his bachelor's, becomes an E6, goes to OCS because his unit had let him go. So the first time I meet Mike Tucker was as a brigade commander at the Ready First Brigade. We set up Ready First Brigade, and actually he was here at Fort Stewart at one time as a battalion commander. But Mike was a brigade commander in Friedberg, and we had the Ready First, Ready University. And he allowed every soldier to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 15 to 1800. And two of his battalion commanders, one is General Hogue in Vicenza, and then General James, Brigadier General James, is now going to Fort Hood. He was with me at Benning. He's just leaving Benning now. But they were the two battalion commanders, and they bought into this for the soldiers to be able to go do education. I did an article on Colonel Mike Tucker. As I say, he got his he got his bachelor's, master's with the University of Maryland. Allowed his soldiers to do this. I did an article on him saying that Colonel Mike Tucker did not support Army education, but Brigadier General Mike Tucker did. He goes to Korea, second ID commander, does the same thing in Korea with the Warrior University. And I saw him. He came back through Benning. He and his wife Teresa to pin a gold bar on his son, sort of following the same route, and met with a lot of his soldiers that were Benning going to Korea, just to let them know. Follow this. He will get you into school, and he did. And he's now, 41 years later, he's now going to pin on a 3rd star and become the G1. So Private Mike Tucker, E6, to 3-star. I mean, of course, he was behind his peers, but he caught up because a lot of his peers probably hadn't made it that far. But he really exemplified the true meaning of adult education and working and believes in education. The last story that I did was an individual that was in Sierra Leone in 1997 in Freetown, Sierra Leone. The coup was going on, massacres. He escaped, got out, got to America, adopted by a family, got his associate degree, got his bachelor's degree. He's a captain in the Special Forces at Eglin Air Force Base, or at the cantonment site with the 7th Special Forces in Afghanistan right now. He set up programs for his soldiers to go to classes. I mean, just phenomenal. You know, to think in 1997, you know, his life was, you know, in peril there, and now he's on the way as a Special Forces captain and just in the United States Army. So these were some of the success stories. One of the last slides that I will have, and we just got these the other day, and the director for Afghanistan is I hired her as a non-military counselor into military education in Friedberg, Germany, Friedberg and Gießen. She's now the director there. They had a graduation with about 50 grads, and the last slide will have the pictures. And they had, during this graduation, there's a rocket attack, you know, and the last picture shows them going into a bunker, having the cake and coffee and punch after the rocket attack. Everything, you know, turned out fine. But it was just that, you know, education, our motto with ACES is going where soldiers go. Providing that education. If they're going to be, wherever they're going to be, you know, we want our Army education to be there. And we've had so many, I mean, so if our soldiers go to Iraq, I mean, well, Afghanistan now and Kuwait and wherever they're going to be going, we have education centers in place. We have universities in place that are there on the ground. And if you ever get a chance to talk to a faculty member that is taught in a tent or taught in a, you know, a Quonset hut or taught in whatever, I mean, it's probably been the most incredible experience that they will ever have. And my dad just got inducted in the Infantry OCS Hall of Fame about a month ago as a 90-year-old. And you know, it was just to see what, you know, all of these individuals that were inducted, what they had gone through, and to see that we're trying to take care of them just like they were taken care of from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or, you know, in our present conflicts. The other point that I, you know, used was building relationships. And I think all of this can be applicable, that we be all that we can be as educators, to give, whether we're military or civilian or whatever. And you're starting to see more and more military coming in. I mean, you know, this 9/11 GI Bill with a transfer has widely opened it up that they can transfer it to their wives, their kids can use it up to age 26. It's phenomenal what this new 9/11 bill has done. It gives them more time to use it. I mean, not everybody is going to do it because, you know, maybe they don't need to transfer it. But I think that you're going to start seeing, you know, in your campuses more and more military, if you already haven't. But they're great learners. I mean, like I say, the average age on this group, and that group that I spoke to the other day, probably half of them were military connected or had a father in the military, so they knew what Fort Benning was. I mean, because they were all from, you know, from the two-state area. But I think you're going to start seeing, you know, more of that, more of the military, and they're great learners. I mean, they bring in. They're not your 18 to 22-year-old because their life experiences are a little more than, you know, I mean, they could have been deployed. I have Rangers at Fort Benning that have been deployed 15, 16 times, you know. So, you know, what they're gonna gain, but the beauty of seeing, you know, the 21-year-old and the 55-year-old, you know, working together is phenomenal. And you know, hopefully you'll see some of that. The last, before I get to this, the last individual I want to just touch on, and if any of y'all are going to the Worldwide Symposium in Las Vegas 2023 to 27, the DoD, it's only every 3 years, And Scotty Smiley is going to be the motivational speaker. Scotty is just a phenomenal guy. I got to really know him well at Benning. He was blinded by a roadside bomb. He was in the brigade of our Bob Brown, our 3-star, we're now going to be a 3-star, going to Fort Lewis, just transferred the other day, or PCS the other day. And he was a West Point graduate. Since he's been blinded, totally blinded, he's the only active duty captain on active duty, only blind officer on active duty. He completed his MBA at Duke, at the Fuqua Business Center in Duke, taught at West Point, climbed Mount McKinley, skydives, surfs, has 2 kids from the Pasco, Washington area, got an ESPY award, leadership award. When Krzyzewski, our Bob Brown played basketball under Mike Krzyzewski at Army, and then Krzyzewski had played under Bobby Knight at Army, and when he was at West Point. And so Krzyzewski comes to Benning a lot because they're still good friends. But he had Scotty Smiley to speak to the Beijing Olympic team about teamwork, about loyalty. And evidently there's a YouTube video I haven't seen, but with Dwayne Wade and LeBron and the Olympic team in Beijing, just emotionally choked. Listen to Scotty Smiley. But if you do get a chance, I mean, his book is Hope Unseated. It's published by Simon & Schuster. Just a great guy. I mean, he has no handicap. He has no handicap. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And he's just completed while he was in Benning, he was there for the Captain's Career Course. And so just had a great chance to work with him. Knew his mentor, Mina Dore, out of Duke, and then is now with the University of North Carolina. Was his eyes for 2 years as he was getting that master's. And just a phenomenal case. I'm not pushing his book, or anything, but it's a great read. Hope Unseen, Scotty Smiley. Okay, I think that ready maybe to move on to these slides here, but like I say, I just wanted them to realize that building relationships and was the other point that I touched on with them, and to always be open. You never know when that contact is going to lead. You never know where it's going to lead, and I think we all see that all the time. And building relationships, whether it be with the government and the institutions, that's important. I mean, if we don't communicate, if we don't open up, you never know what can be done. I mean, we're doing some things with Billy Wells right now, but there's a lot of things going on with other schools. But we're always looking for things that are unique, and that's what General Brown, what we worked on at Benning and for some of our other bases, looking at some of the things that we don't have. I mean, there are some jobs out there that we don't even know what these jobs are going to be. With 80,000 soldiers being put out of the Army or downsizing in the next 3 to 4 years, and if I have my figures wrong on some of these, please correct me, but I think it's about 80,000 in the next 3 to 4 years that we're going to be downsizing. And so you're going to see these coming into your schools. We are working, the ACAP, Army Career Alumni Program, is one of the big programs on the bases. Things that the Army Education Center used to do after Desert Storm, ACAP comes in, becomes a bigger player. We're now going to be, the education centers are now going to be involved in working because the soldiers are going to be looking at what to do. It's going to be about getting the jobs. I mean, the unemployment rate is 8%. Among the military, it's about 9.2. And so education is going to be, or has been, and always will be a key. I mean, the GI Bill is what got America going after World War II. And we think that just knowing the ones that have this GI Bill, and with the blue ribbon, I mean, the yellow ribbon programs, and all the different schools that are involved in that. It's phenomenal, and we hope that the military learners will be great learners for you, and that they will definitely be contributors. We've seen a lot of that, and that if you are at Worldwide in Las Vegas, you will see a lot of schools that are definitely working with military. They have these military cohort groups, or these military groups to assist them as they're making the transition, because they're a unique learner, but they're a great learner. Okay, I'm with the hub. We have hubs and spokes, and y'all have one here. My dear friend Pam King is the hub director for for Fort Stewart. She's just last time I had a card from her from Key West. She was taking a well-deserved break because she was heavily involved in the executive order that President Obama signed with Senator Hagan, and she was definitely working strongly on that. And we had several of our education center personnel were there at the signing with President Obama, and Pam did a great job with that. But she's the hub director for some of the Gordons. I have the 6 bases in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and North Florida, and then the Mississippi, the Camp Shelby. But we do a lot of the same things. We try to, whatever they're trying to do, we're all trying, for the good of the soldiers and the good of the family members. That's what our mission is, to take care of soldiers and to take care of family members. But that's our logo, Army Continuing Education System. We're governed under AR 621-5 that tells everything that the Army Education Center does. And our commanders, our generals, our garrison commanders, want us to be their education person. Because, there are 2,300 different schools that are out there that, and Kathy, Dr. Sneed can tell you, more about, their numbers that they're involved with. Kathy, y'all are at 2,000 or 2,000 institutions with the Servicemen's Opportunity College system. And so, there are people, there are 2,000 that probably would want to be on a base, but we've got to be the representatives for our commanding general and our garrison commanders to deal with, any type programs that jeopardize the soldier in their funds or different things like that. So we've had a big focus on dealing with that, and we are, and we want to find programs that bring quality and that bring newness. Like I say, we don't know what some of the jobs might be in 25 years. This cybersecurity is going to be a big thing, I think. We're already engaged in that, but you never know what technology is so changing that it's going to be incredible what jobs may be needed in the future. And if we find a better mousetrap, we want to do it, but yet take care of the basic needs and all the needs of our soldiers and the family members. Because the saying was, you recruit the soldier but retain the family member, and you've got to keep the family members happy, and that's why we had the CAA programs, the scholarships, different things like that to try to assist them. And in Georgia, of course, you have the Hope Scholarship. Okay, everybody's got a mission statement. I'll just go through some of these quickly, but we're about lifelong learning, and we're not the 18 to 20-year-old, but we do have the 18-year-olds, and we want to assist them and make their life in the military, prepare them, make them better soldiers for their commanders, but also to prepare them, if they do exit the military, to deal with life ahead. Job performance. Our goal is to opportunities to enhance job performance, skill qualification, and career growth. This is why the soldiers have every year, not even touching their GI Bill, they get $4,500 a year from 1 October to 30 September to deal with education. Then they can do a certificate programs as well. So we're trying to reach all of these and to build future leaders. I mean, that is what it's all about, you know, building leaders, and because they are the future. They are our future. The hub concept, as I stated, basically your headquarters here for this area is Fort Stewart, with Gordon and Fort Buchanan and the one in Tampa, MacDill. So it's a hub spoke type concept. We have testing centers, education programs, and learning centers. This is a Benning hub. It shows and Fort McPherson. We've just closed that, and matter of fact, Fort Gordon became the enclave for Fort Gillem, I think, and but we still have a lot of them because Benning is closer. Some of them come down there for testing and things like that. But I brought the staff from McPherson, but we've included that because we're still getting rumors that Fort McPherson, this beautiful base, may eventually have a life, you know, and so we don't know. So we're keeping it there. There's probably about 7 people that are working on Fort McPherson right now, turning the lights on and you know, making sure that things don't get destroyed. But you know, if you go down to Eglin, if you're ever down at Destin, Florida, Fort Walton Beach, and you go by the 7th Special Forces, you will see an incredible facility, funds for the 7th Special Forces that has been built down there. I mean, the chapel's going up now. I mean, it's incredible, all the facilities. So there's probably places, and you know, where you have in Atlanta, Georgia, this incredible facility that, you know, used to house FORSCOM headquarters, Reserve headquarters, and First Army headquarters, and it's now, you know, a ghost town. Hopefully we will see it be revived. We're not sure. Positives of it went to this concept because just, you know, for centralization, you know, it could have been funding, and the 2 major hubs seem to have been, you know, the Fort Stewart and the Fort Benning. I mean, they have other hubs. West Point has a hub, but I mean, basically there's, you know, would be putting a sign on a door calling to call to West Point or something like that. So the 2 major hubs, you know, were this Fort Stewart and the Fort Benning. These are all programs that are involved at an Ed Center. I mean, it's basically a campus. I mean, so, I mean, just a show of hands, have y'all been to any of the Ed Centers on any of the bases? Okay. Did you get a chance to get a feel for what they do, or? Because I would recommend that. I would encourage that to view that. The counseling, we have counselors. They're GS counselors, government service counselors, you know, requiring a master's degree, to do career counseling, to do vocational counseling, to do educational counseling, working with soldiers to get them on the right path, you know, for what they're trying to do. Basic skills, some call it FAST, functional aptitude skills training, but basically trying to bring their levels up so that they can do and be all they want to be in the military, and hopefully in taking civilian courses. You know, we don't want them, you know, set up for failure. I mean, if their reading level or math levels are, you know, below what is needed for that particular college course, we want to try to get them up there so that they have a chance, to succeed. You know, many of them have had failures in the past, or, you know, for whatever reason it is. But, you know, the opportunity for them to succeed, start out with something that they like, maybe, and then to build. It's amazing. Many of these graduates the other day were probably first-time graduates of their family, and it's just you can see the pride, and you can see a graduation is a phenomenal thing, you know, no matter where you are. But when you're a first-time graduate of that family, it's even greater to see. Financial assistance, we provide that through our tuition assistance, through our GI Bills, and whether it be the Montgomery GI Bill or the 9/11 bill. Academic testing could be CLEP. I'm sure all of y'all take the CLEP college level examination program in your schools, or the DSSTs, the Dante Subject Standard Test, the Excelsior exams, or we do a series of all the tests, the SATs, the ACTs. We set them up for the GREs or the GMATs, or whatever may be needed. And then the Army personnel tests. These would be tests like defense language aptitude to determine if they have the ability to learn a language, or the DLPT, the proficiency test. And they can pick up anywhere 12 college credits, possibly from the CLEP, or they can pick up college credits from the DLPT. And they can also get pay. They can get pay for a language, Russian or Chinese, or whatever the language may be. This special group, 7 Special Forces that we have down in Eglin, it's a Portuguese, Spanish, and Arabic, and then there's a 4th battalion that speaks Southern, or whatever. I mean, it's just a little bit of everything. But that's as a support battalion. But so it's one of the first things they want to do when they get back from Honduras or whatever is to take that test, because they're that pay for their language pay is about to run out, and so they have probably 10 people a day. I mean, in seats taking tests at Eglin Air Force Base, and we're sending them out to Hurlbut, to Rucker, to wherever if they need to do it sooner than if they don't make the 40 for that week that are being tested, or that 50 that week that are being tested, and they can get up to Rucker or to Hurlbut or to Pensacola, we'll get them over there. But that's also the flight exams. That's the ASVAB exams, vocational aptitude battery, and then the learning centers where they can go in. Learning centers have changed a little bit because so much is online, but that's where they will go in and have computer access, to do their basic skills in these learning centers. It's like, multi-purpose libraries. So every base is a little different. Yes, sir.
Do you ever do anything with the naval services?
With the naval?
Naval services, Navy and Marine Corps.
Well, we don't, because we're the Army. We're doing a joint base. We have a mini joint base with Eglin, but the joint base Lewis McChord is probably our strongest joint base. I'm a big believer in purple with all services, of which we do a little bit in overseas, but a lot of it is based on the money. I mean, in our system is Go Army Ed, that our soldiers access their tuition assistance through IBM. IBM has been a partner for 5, 7, 8 years now, and they're a great partner. But the Air Force cannot do the Go Army Ed system. That's why I had to put staff down in Eglin Air Base for the Army. Eventually, it may get figured out, and everybody can share the money and things like that. But we would, if a Marine or a Navy person came in, we would do everything we could to take care of that person, and we do. We would get them to the Navy person to get their tuition assistance. But we can talk to them at an Army base about college, about testing. I mean, they can all do their testing. So if a Navy person comes into an Army base, we can test them on everything. We just can't give them tuition assistance, for a college course. But we try to, we don't want to turn away any service member. And hopefully there'll come a time that all services will be purple, and we'll see. It's a ways to go, but we're working on it. But we like having a little mini, like I say, Lewis McChord is the first sort of true joint base. We're a mini joint base at Eglin and the 7th Special Forces. We also have a Ranger, 6 Rangers down there, and EOD, the Explosive Ordnance Detachment. We have about 970 there. So it's about 4,000 altogether of Army folks. Eligibility, tuition assistance, and these could be some people that, that you might have in classes. They're using this tuition assistance. For enlisted, there is no obligation. For an officer, they incur a 2-year ADSO, active duty, additional 2-year obligation. But if they're in for 20 and this is their 3rd year in the Army, that's not a problem. And the reserves have the 4-year. The $4,500 a year, cap at $250, which means anything over $750 on a 3-credit-hour course, they would pay out of pocket, or if a school has they could use their top-up for MGI, for the Montgomery GI Bill, and used for associate, bachelor's, master's, and certificates. Doctoral programs. The only time I knew in my career, we had a University of Oklahoma doctorate in Heidelberg, and using TA. It's no longer there, but we had it for a short period. But that, for their doctorate, they can use their their GI Bill. Excuse me a second. And that's the Montgomery Bill, just the eligibility. These were service. Yeah, you've had the old GI Bill, the Vietnam era bill. Then it rolled over into VEAP, Veterans Education Assistance Program, a 2-for-1. Not a great bill, but no bank would ever give you $2 for every one you put in. And then they went into the Montgomery GI Bill as of 685, 1 July 85, and then now the 9/11 in addition. So they've got 2 bills going. So it's VA has their hands full, keeping up with all the everything going on. And then they can also put in an additional 600 and get back 5,400. So that's a great thing. For the 9/11 bill, anybody that served after 9/11, 2001, with 90 days is going to get a part of a bill. I mean, they're not going to get the full thing, but they're going to get part of it. And they also get a housing, get a basic housing allowance. They get books paid. So there's a lot of, in addition to having life experiences, they also come with the dollars and through their support of their GI Bills. So, and once again, the yearly book stipend of $1,000, but transferred to dependents and qualifying circumstances. Top up, that's just a thing where if a course exceeds the 750, they can take away from their GI Bill and get that paid, that they're not having to pay it out of pocket. On-base schools, and Mark Ridley is here with Columbus State. We have they are one of our on-base schools. Georgia Military, are they here? Georgia Military, huh? Georgia Military's not? Oh, really? Okay. So then I can assume Vincennes is not. And it's interesting. I mean, why would Vincennes? They came in with something that was unique. If Jim Anderson, and Jim's just retired from 20 years at Central Texas College, and Chancellor. If you got Fort Hood, Texas, with 50,000 soldiers, and you have Central Texas College in the backyard, couldn't get any closer to the gate, and they're not doing any business on Fort Hood. Somebody wasn't doing their homework, is the way I would see it. But if Jim Anderson, retired Air Force. He did his homework, and they've done, they've wound up in Europe. I mean, you have some schools that, by history, in World War II, University of Maryland was brought in after for the occupation after World War II, And so, it's only natural that they're going to be involved. Central Texas was there, for 35 years, and still there. So some schools, not that, they have just been doing it because they've been doing it for long periods. The last school, we don't have, we have 7 schools. We had 6 schools, and normally that's about the number that you would have on a base. Fort Hood may have a few more, but not really. Not too many more than that. And this Central Texas is only a new school since August of last year. And the only reason they're there is because we brought down, it was supposed to be 29,000 coming from Fort Knox for the Armor. The Armor School was coming to Benning, and as is at Benning. And we had 1,100 enrollments of soldiers at Fort Knox. And so I said, it's not fair, for them to have to go to Chattahoochee Valley or Columbus Tech or some of the community colleges or whatever, when you got 1,100 of them already enrolled with Central Texas. So that's sort of why they got in there. But it's a lot of it is based on space. Also we don't have the space to have 25 schools. That's why we have visiting schools. We have, and a lot of it is based on the student population that you may have. We have probably 20 visiting schools that come on Benning to meet with their students once a week, once a month, once a quarter, twice a week, whatever the need may be. And because we want to try to see what is best for that soldier. And I think there's something for everybody. Everybody has something unique to offer, but we want that soldier to have choices. And I really believe in choices, that people do have the choices. So those are the schools that are there. Testing centers, I've already touched on those. The language and the CLEP and SSST or SATs and things. Just the locations, things they could do at the internet access, review for SATs, GREs, sort of like a multi-learning center. This was a Kandahar picture that just from about 2 weeks ago now. This was, if you can see, this was that was the stage that was set up for the graduation. I think there should be, and I have the hard copies of them. Yeah, there it is. They had about 45 grads, and they could have been. There were several schools. It wasn't, wasn't just one school. Individual on the right there is Alan Berg, Dr. Alan Berg, and this was after the rocket attack in the bunker, eating their, having their cake. But Dee White was the lady at the podium there. She's the education director there. But and some of those people that were at the Troy graduation that I spoke at the other day, could have easily been there. They could have easily been there. And we want them to know that, just because they're not back in Georgia or Alabama or so, we want to take care of them and to give them something that will, and it's incredible, how excited they were, to do this. And I just had I guess this went out, and a colleague that's the director in Vicenza said, well, we'll invite you to be the speaker, but we can pay everything, but you got to get over here type thing. So they do it anywhere. They have a Vicenza graduation, or they have a Lakenheath graduation, or they have a whatever. They can still attend their own graduations, but we want them to have as similar experience that they would have if they were in Savannah, Georgia, or Columbus, Georgia, or wherever. Questions? No, I think that pretty well covers. That's probably gone too long, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here, and just to and I'll be here a little bit. If anybody has any questions, because I think that what we do when in Army education or military education is unique, and we do a lot of cutting edge type things. We love that we have an opportunity to work with IBM as our partner, and with Servicemen's Opportunity College with Dr. Sneed, in having these partnerships, and that was building relationships, and that was, like I say, that was the second point that I was trying to make at that graduation. And if it weren't for the partnerships and the relationships, with the American Council of Education or with the Services Opportunity Colleges or IBM, that's what it's all about. And we also try to partner, through the different professional associations, American Association of Adult Education, the American Counseling Association, all of these type activities. So if there are some of these sessions that come up, the Commission of Military Education, their last conference was in, where was CCME, Kath? Orlando. And next year it's going to be in San Diego. San Diego. And then AAACE is going to be in Indianapolis. No, Cincinnati. I'm sorry, Cincinnati. So, I mean, if there are conferences, and because the last couple have been in Orlando area and one in Tampa, if you do get a chance, you can interact with a lot of other schools that are working with the military, just to learn some things related to how we work with our military. And I think Dr. Sneed's going to be doing a presentation later on, and she'll be able to share with you, a lot of their thoughts with Services Opportunity College. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you very much for your time.
I'm Billy Wells. I'm the Vice President for Executive Affairs at North Georgia College. I am an adult learner. I'm currently enrolled in a program at Vanderbilt for a doctoral program. And without the GI Bill, I couldn't do it, I got to tell you. That and Yellow Ribbon. So my hat's off to VA and what they do. What I want to do today is give you an update. A lot of us at the system have worked on an overall plan for working with the military. Military Education Initiative. It's a subcomponent, actually, of the Complete College Georgia plan. And a couple of things. If you really look at what goes on in Georgia with regard to the military, it's pretty significant. We have 8 major military installations. According to what Gray just said, we may have one come back online at some time in the future. Over 100,000 military. We are the 5th largest state in the nation that has the number as regards to the number of military in the state. We have 3 wounded warrior units. Some of you are co-located at locations that have wounded warrior units. There's one at Fort Stewart. There's one in Augusta at Fort Gordon, and of course there's one at Fort Benning, Georgia. There are almost 750,000 veterans in the state. I would anticipate that might grow over time, and we have over 40 ROTC programs. Among those ROTC programs are 2 military colleges. That's North Georgia College and State University, and the other college. More on that later. We have 2 ROTC strategic language flagships. One is North Georgia College, and the other is Georgia Tech. There is a 3rd language flagship in the system, and that's UGA for Portuguese, as it happens. And also 19% of all the Department of Defense dependent schools are in the state of Georgia. That's a pretty big chunk. I thought I'd show you a few statistics. In the Army, they teach you this thing called IPB, or Intelligence Preparation of Battlefield. And it's back to what Gray said, do your homework. We did a couple of checks on different things, and in terms of active duty population, these are the major military installations in the state, and you can get a real quick feel for where the larger numbers are. And that kind of ties into the potential strategies for the system. If you look at it by component, there are a couple of questions about the other services. By far, the Army is the largest in the state. That does not mean that we want to neglect the other services, for sure. There are a lot of things that we can do for the Air Force, Navy, and Marines. But their populations within the state are smaller, and at some of the other locations. I show this slide because there's a significant trend. The first CCME conference, by the way, that's Council of College and Military Educators. The first CCME conference I went to was about 5 years ago. Where's Mike? Was that San Diego again? Monterey, yeah. But at that point in time, only about 50, it was just under 50%, I think, and Kathy Sneed can help me if I start to say something incorrect. But I think just less than 50% of all tuition assistance was paid for online. Well, look at that change. There are a lot of reasons for that. Number one, I think there are more and more online programs, including degree programs. The lifestyle has become even potentially more chaotic than it was before over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And so online really has come a long way, and so the large majority of what is paid out in tuition assistance goes to online instruction. I say that because we have a tremendous capability within the state to do that kind of thing, and I'll talk about that when we get to one of the courses of action that we're looking at. These are the current on-base providers. Notice in several cases the absence of University System of Georgia institution. Technical college system is doing a pretty good job of this, but we've got some gaps out there with regard to service. Now, if you take the online approach and you take the visiting college approach, it's not necessarily that ugly, so to speak, but I would offer to you that there's some opportunities out there to engage in terms of supporting to the service members. Gray mentioned that there are 2 major hubs. He's the coordinator for one, and Pam King is the one for the Fort Stewart hub, which covers down on Fort Gordon, MacDill Air Force Base, Hunter Army Airfield, and of course Fort Stewart. Did I leave anything out there? That's her territory basically, right? These are the non-USG on-base providers, just to give you a feel for who's out there. What I found kind of interesting, Fort Gordon is pretty stacked. The other thing that I found really interesting is Georgia Military College is at all the different, or is at most of the different locations. That's not a university system institution, although their funding flows through the university system. If I did a regional laydown, and if I was savvy enough technologically to make a map, I'd prefer to do that. But this gives you the proximate institutions from both the technical college system and the university system at each one of the major military installations. So there is significant capability, essentially right outside the gate at every location. It's not necessarily engaged, however. I have to drop back and mention one thing I did not mention. The Military Education Initiative is a joint initiative between the technical college system and the university system. Some of the folks that are sitting in this room are part of that planning group. The reason for that is that we want the full range of capabilities, educational capabilities presented on the installation from both public sector systems. That kind of gives me a segue into the next slide. If you look at the capability for public, not private, but public post-secondary education in Georgia that can reach out to the military, it is one of the most significant capabilities in the nation. This system, the combined systems are greater in capability than any equivalent across the nation, with the possible exception of New York and California. So we got one heck of a lot of capability. We're 3 times the capability of the University of Maryland, and we have about 80,000 more students in our institutions than the University of Phoenix services. So it is really huge. If you think about the capability of that many faculty members across that many disciplines and that many levels of post-secondary education, it is absolutely huge. They also bring 2 capabilities back to the distance ed piece. Both the university system and the technical college system have significant online capabilities. We have Georgia On My Line, which most of you are familiar with. They have the Georgia Virtual Technical College. I did a little scrub of what's out there in terms of degree programs about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, I was shocked. I thought I'd find about 10 full degree programs in the system. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the number is 266. Those are degree programs that all the different institutions provide, and they're online. The problem is nobody knows about it. So you got a capability out there that really is underutilized. When we developed the group, one of the first things we wanted to do is kind of establish the definitions to help guide us as to where we were going. And so we said, well, let's define the military learner. And so from the systems perspective, the military learner is basically every service member, also the civilian workforce, and also family members and veterans. That's the target audience for what we're trying to put together at the system level. This is I think, a very, very important starting point, defining the audience that we're trying to go after. There was a big discussion at CCME about military friendly, and it is, I believe my English teacher would say it's a trite expression, or it's worn out at this point and used by a lot of folks that are not really military friendly. They're money friendly, and so the phrase has really kind of gotten, I don't know, got a bad rap at this point. We say, well, what will we call what we're really trying to do? We all know about the phrase of an access mission, and so we decided that probably the best way to couch this, and rather than be military friendly, was to be designated as a military access institution. There are some rules associated with that. If you want to play, if you want to be a military access institution, you really need to fully adopt all the SOC criteria for their membership. Now, I know the reality is a lot of people sign SOC agreements, and when you get right down to it, they may or may not meet all the requirements in terms of practice. This would put a different layer. Kathy can only look at so many things, and she accepts the word of people who send in their application. There's no team that comes down and thoroughly examines everything you do. But if you were to become a military access institution within a university system, be designated as that, people are going to look at it and make sure you're doing what you say you do with the SOC criteria. But that's the bottom line with regard to a military access institution. We also recognize in our planning that there are institutions, primarily your R1, your research universities, which for a variety of reasons will not be able to meet all the SOC criteria. However, within their institution, they may have a very valuable program for the military that could be a military access program. But once again, it would meet the criteria that SOC has. And as I understand it, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a provision for segments of a given university to be a SOC member. Okay. Okay. Right. So there's an opportunity for the larger universities that would have a great deal of difficulty as an entire institution, but parts of the institution can join. This is our mission statement, very simple. I like short, brief mission statements that keep you focused. Basically what we want is to provide a complete range of opportunities to the service members and their families without regard to location. Gray spent a lot of time talking about a lot of the overseas stuff that Army Continuing Education does. That in the extreme is what we're looking at. We want to be able to do that as well. We looked at a number of key tasks. This is a very simplified, for briefing purposes, list of things. Those of you who are sitting in the room, Greg, we know it's a lot more detailed than this, but this gives you a general idea of where we're headed. Data collection is a big thing. If you're in the policy world, you know you got to collect data in order to justify your policy decisions and help guide you in the right direction. We don't have the capability yet to do some of the things we need to do. In particular, tracking service members, veterans, and the like. They can transition from one status to another and be very difficult for us to know. So that's one of the things. The other thing in the data collection is, what are the needs? There's been no assessment, at least from the university system perspective, of what are the capabilities that are required on the installations in the state of Georgia to adequately support the service members in their pursuit of degrees. Along with that, you've got to identify the policy areas that are holding folks back. Federal government has helped us out with a couple of those because now, if you're a service member, you're going to pay in-state tuition if you're stationed in that state. But we're going beyond that. I know that the Board of Regents announced that the institutional fee is no longer relevant to military personnel. That's a good first step, and there'll be others to follow. The analysis goes on down into the programs and delivery. We don't know what we don't know. I just mentioned the capability that the system has as a whole with the online degrees. I don't think anybody really understands that, not even ourselves until here recently. We want a presence within every venue that DoD has, whether it's on base, whether it's online, and anything in between. And of course, you can't do that without resources. So there has to be a resourcing plan at the university system level that facilitates things like having counselors available on military installations, developing programs with curriculum developers for targeted programs that support the military, those kinds of things. And then the final thing we talked about, those of you that were in the Soldiers to Scholars meeting yesterday, is the leadership and structure across the system that allows us to function effectively and efficiently. That probably, I would say, probably will be a Regents Advisory Committee that does that. Soldiers to Scholars is going to be a valuable contributor to help vet things as we move along. And then probably, well, most certainly there needs to be a system-level office at an appropriate grade level, so to speak, that can actually do the coordination with installations and with the military. But those are the key tasks that have to be performed. We developed 3 different courses of action. That there's some degree of overlap, but each one is kind of unique. Course of Action 1 was kind of a broad front strategy for regional engagement, partnering USG and technical college system institutions that are proximate to a location, a military location, in a partnership to link up with the ESO and try to develop programs that meet the installation needs for their soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. If the 2 institutions could not fill the gaps, then other institutions within the 2 systems would be called upon to develop programs that would meet the requirements. And of course, go ahead and continue to expand the online venue. Course of Action 2 is more appealing to me as an old military guy. Go after the center of gravity, go after the big target. So the main effort in this one would be Fort Benning, Georgia, because of their size. They are the largest installation with the largest population in the state, and we have Columbus State right outside the gate, along with Columbus Tech. So it really is a good opportunity to try to zero in on you, Gray, and try to help you out with anything where you have those gaps that you talked about earlier. And of course, there would be supporting efforts at different other locations throughout the state, but Fort Benning would be the main effort. In, I think, our 3rd or 4th session, we said, well, okay, let's think out of the box. What can we do? Those are pretty reasonable courses of action. But what could we do if we did something completely different? And so we said, why don't we create some kind of joint online university? One of the biggest problems, I think, with the Georgia Virtual Technical College, and perhaps with Georgia On My Line as well, is lack of advertising and promotion. The university system is not a degree-granting institution, so how do you do that? And so there are a lot of issues with making something like this work, but it could potentially be done. Where we have one-stop shopping for the military to select essentially any program that exists, because I will tell you, between those 2 systems, and I think you're looking at probably 400 to 500 online degree or certificate through degree to include 1 or 2 doctoral programs. It's just an incredible capability. But how do you tap into it? How does an ESO at Fort Benning or Fort Stewart know to advise somebody that's looking for a completely flexible master's degree in business? How do they advise? Where's the one-stop shop for those kinds of things? You have to make it simple. You cannot put administrative obstacles in front of the troops, because they'll take the path of least resistance when it comes to the administrative challenges. Timeline, we still got a couple things to add to this. We went to the Robins Air Force Base Higher Education Forum back in May. Mike and John, and I think Mark, there are a whole bunch of folks here that were at that. Discovered that they're more technically oriented probably than anything else, which kind of pointed them toward Georgia Tech and Southern Poly and maybe a couple of other different institutions. In late May, we had a U.S. Army Cadet Command Conference, which led to a couple of very interesting things. We had a European Command representative there from J9, and J9 works interagency kinds of things, and one of the aspects of their interagency kinds of things is military outreach, or I'm sorry, education outreach, academic partnerships. The individual was there, Trevor Boykin, said, we're looking for partners. They have a lot of stuff in Eastern Europe, and they're looking for partners to play. And so we said, well, what about, a kind of a little planning meeting at some point in time, maybe in early fall, to see what the university system and its institutions can do for you. So we're probably going to visit with them in September or October. It's interesting that U.S. Army or U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, is also co-located in Stuttgart, and so we probably will hit both major commands at the same time to see what their needs are. But there are tremendous opportunities beyond the state of Georgia, I guess is really my point, to make sure that we can tap into for our institutions. We're here today at the ALC Institute, and this has tremendous promise for bringing all of us together in a more synchronized manner. I would highly recommend that your institution send a representative to DoD Worldwide. It is the largest networking opportunity that there is with regard to the military. All the service, continuing education type folks are there. Service members opportunities, colleges are there. They all present. They're available for discussions. There are breakout sessions that you can go to that many of your peers in other locations will present some of their best practices. It's a tremendous opportunity. There is one other opportunity and another organization I highly recommend that you join. I think I want to say that the membership fee is around $500 or $600, Mike. I can't remember what CCME costs these days. They have a conference every year, and it's generally in late January, early February, sometime in that time frame. It's the same kind of thing, but it's not DoD, but DoD is there. And I highly encourage you to join that organization and to send representatives to their meetings. You'll learn a lot. We got a couple of system-level planning staff updates, but essentially by early fall we expect to have the plan, or maybe by end of October have the plan complete. Prior to that, we hope to have some drafts out to circulate among folks. Our primary vetting group is going to be Soldiers to Scholars, but if you're interested in receiving the material and you're not a Soldiers to Scholars institution, no problem. This is open to anybody in terms of comment. That last one there, state level planning conference. It was mentioned yesterday that we really need somebody to do the planning for that. Here's what I think, based on the discussions that have been had at the system, is that what we will probably do in lieu of that initially is go to specific regions. So Gray, probably what we'll be looking at is to coordinate with you to come meet with your folks with system representation and institutional representation from those that are interested, and maybe do some planning, help identify or ask you to help identify your gaps and your needs, and then show you potentially what we could do to help. Probably would want to do the same thing at Fort Stewart or with Pam King as well. That concludes this update. If you have any questions, I'm here. Yes, Anna. That, I think what we would want to do, we don't want to, I mean, we're about workforce development as well. I mean, so it wouldn't be structured in a way that would cut out anyone. It would be structured in a way to facilitate access by the military. Okay, so it might be a single portal if I'm a military person and I'm looking for an MBA or an MPA that's fully online, or even a nursing a master's degree in nursing education. I could go to that single portal and do a quick search. It would pull up all the programs across the system that are available, give me the instructions for how to apply for admission, those kinds of things. I can't overemphasize the need for simplicity of access. The more bureaucratic you make it, the more difficult it becomes. Yes, sir.
The role of the military education officer, where would you recommend that being housed within the university system?
That's probably a good question. And I'm not, is there anybody, where's Mark Ridley? You want to address that? What's the best place to house the military? I'll use liaison for lack of a better word.
Over my last 2 years in the job, my learned lesson is to see your academic affairs. Because when you're dealing with policies, you're dealing with procedures, you're dealing with issues at state level, you're trying to get advisement done. For academia, when you look at the ACE credit evaluations, you're looking at prior learning assessment. A lot of those issues and discussions come up in the academic arena. Tuition assistance is financial aid, but that is not the primary role. GI Bill, as a certifying official, does not need to sit under the first order office. Greater Spartan office is not a transfer of credit. Everything Billy mentioned up here is academic stuff. So my recommendation is it sits under an academic side of the house, and it stays there because that's where you're going to get stuff done for the soldiers. Restore the financial aid or transfer of credit. Transfer of credit, registrar just puts it on there. It's not a registrar issue. It's an academic issue. That's my take.
I think you're spot on. Yeah, the other thing I would offer to you is the individual that does those duties needs to be, for lack of a better phrase, in a position of influence. You know, they need to be a relatively senior person who is a direct report to a vice president. Otherwise, you know, folks are doing great work down in the trenches, don't get me wrong, but you have to be positioned to where you can influence the action, and that means you got to be close to policymakers at your university. Okay. Anything else? Anything for Gray? All right, I guess, are we at break time, Mike? We are. Okay. If you want to come up and ask some questions one-on-one, please feel free.